your deed. And so most people think a deed is allodial, correct? So they work all their life, pay this house off, and they think they got an allodial piece of property because they got a deed. Well, a deed is a rental fee under feudal law. It's not a title of possession. In other words, you're possessively caretaking for it. Which is why after you receive that deed, you still pay taxes at a high rate that's just as big as your mortgage when you first started paying. Because you never own it. It belongs to the state corporation. But they own it because they own you. You see how simple that is? And I'm saying that so that you don't get caught up in the emotionalism of looking at the objects, but recognize it's actually your status that establishes that anything you own belongs to the state, including your children. And so the marriage license is another instrument that's used the same way, same with the birth certificate. The birth certificate is used so the corporation or the plantation claims the birth of the child. Like you get a certificate and it'll say, born in the state of New Jersey. Say, born in Camden, in the state of New Jersey. So that means the Camden Municipal Corporation gave you birth, being subject to the New Jersey State Corporation established in 1844, and that's your mother. And that's a certificate where the mother signs the child over to the hospital, who is in cahoots with the state under the Christian black codes, and they regulate, and they're like spies, they tell everything, and they operate together. Now you look back into the Christian black codes of 1724 and you see the absolute relationship between the hospital and the state. All right? So the offspring of the womb automatically belongs to the state, and so that you don't feel uncomfortable, instead of saying slave, they'll call it W-A-R-D, ward of the state. So the child being state property, that instrument or that birth certificate, being that's their property under commercial auspices, is transferred into a stock. And so at birth, that child, I think as of now, was about 20 years ago, was about 16,000. So about now it's probably $30-some-odd-thousand, or representative 35,000 units, that when the child is born and that certificate is put on them, that burden is already put on that child. So what they do, they borrow against it, project it on the tax that they expect to get from that thing during its life cycle. All right? So
last I was reading, it was $630,000.
$630,000 now? Yeah, just because that's because it accelerated exponentially.
And they have on the birth certificate mother or other informant.
Yes, 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 and they're agents. And also when those things, and remember, don't take offense, from a political perspective, they're listed as it, they're not listed as people. Yes. Negroes, blacks, and colored are listed in government and in military as it. And also if they are neutralized in a war or conflict, they're listed as advisors. So if you see in any conflict where a certain amount of persons are neutralized and they say so many advisors died, they're Asiatics, of Asiatic African birth. They're not listed as citizens. This is also why they have a difficulty, as you see over the years, you see different wars go up that take place, and you see different people start movements to try to get these people recognized and all this stuff, you know, from Troop 54, from the Civil War and all that kind of stuff, and they doing all kind of stuff to get them recognized. The reason why they're not, because they're not citizens, they're property. They're property of the citizens. Whoever's name they bear, that's bonded. They're under liens and bonds from birth. So they're born in sin. And born in sin does not mean like, you know, right and wrong. Like, born in sin means born in ignorance. Sin is ancient Hebrew. And when they translate, just like when they translate the Bible, they don't translate the culture. They translate European romantic culture and interject Constantine's principles, when in actuality that means ignorance. Sin is ignorance or lack of knowledge. All right, so keep that in mind. But one of the things, and one of the reasons why I'm giving these points, and I want you to really take them to heart, because what we want to do eventually is get most of the Asiatics conscious, so that we can solve both the profiling problem, because we're going to do a national suit. class action. And then we're going to world court too. But the deal is we want to get the people conscious on a local level, and then we want to give them enough information so they can start fighting cases even on the very local level, elemental, municipal level. So keep in mind that the driver's license comes under excise taxation. And the fact that it expires proves what to you relative to identity? Does your identity expire? Can your identity expire? Well, why does your identity expire with the driver's license? Because it's not an identification card. It's a proof of contract information. It's a prima facie article, instrument used to regulate your economy. Do you understand? See, for instance, like this. Now, sis, all right, say we're married, right? And you're our children. And we're struggling to try to make it do our thing, right? They regulate what you produce. How? Because they already know that you don't really have money. Because it's all bookkeeping. So they got all the records on you, and the IRS is a private corporation of 12 sections. It's 12 corporations in sections that are operating for the European corporate slaveholders, translated from the plantations to the corporations. It is not the government of the United States Republic. Don't confuse that. It's private corporations who are bill collectors for Congress people and other people who have investments in chattel property. Many which have been received by primogeniture. That means the principle of slavery was passed down to generations. So you inherit that no different than you inherit real estate. And they come under the same principles. So you must understand this is not opinion, it's law. And by you not knowing this is how a lot of our people in the small communities are always taken advantage of, and they call it prejudice. But prejudice is put out there for you to divert the attention from what's really happening to you. You know, so like if somebody stole the factory that you're supposed to get from your mother, they start an organization for the National Association of Colored People's cookie stealing things, so you don't steal as many cookies that they did last year, and you call it progress. And you say, well, why would they even help us and then give us some contributions and stuff like that, some 501c3 tax benefits so that we can do this organization that actually condemns them? It's because they're diverting you from the big load. Because they already know it's against the divine laws of nature, and that the nature of the being is to rebel. It's against nature. So if they give you something to divert your energies makes an agreement ethereally with the atmosphere. And then all is well because you say it is, but it is not. And so that takes the karmic load off of him, and you accept it in a contract that you don't know is a contract. And you think that you're doing right. And when you violate, he tells you you broke the law. And you don't even know it has nothing to do with law whatsoever. The contract makes the law. Are you clear? Are you following me? I don't want to get past anyone because it's very important that you understand these concepts. And you understand these concepts that I'm telling you for correction are ancient. They're ancient principles of civilization from the great law of the great peace, from which the Constitution that governs this land in this day was adopted from. They didn't draft this document up from some Englishman that was trying to find some religious freedom. No, Moors, 35 Moors, 20 European sons, in agreement to stop the continuous wars between the Muslim Moors and the Christian Crusaders, to stop these hundreds of years wars, established the United States Republic of North America as a beacon light for the entire civilized world, which is what that Constitution absolutely represents. So understand, you're part of this thing. Don't look at that Constitution as being just for the European sons. It is not. They took it that way and projected that way to you. So when they come at you that way, you correct it. But believe me, if you're using his name, you have no standing in law, no judicio standi. And so the Constitution does not apply to you. And so when you look at certain problems that we're having, and we keep saying that we don't have due process rights, etc., it is because you're out.